So now that we've talked a little bit about what language is speech, it's social, and it's about sense, now I'd like to move on to how we learn it. So if you think about most people across history and across cultures who have used a language or who know a language, you'd say that most of them actually have never sat down to study that language, much less a second one. So here we want to draw a distinction between practicing a language and studying it. So the metaphor I like to use to discuss this is that of riding a bike. So we can sit in a garage, for example, and we can talk about downward force on the pedals and the different gear ratios and how much we need to turn the handlebars or how much lean we give the bicycle and how that affects what we're doing. This gives us knowledge about bike riding, but it doesn't actually give us the skill to ride the bike. In a similar way, if we sit down to study a language and we talk about its orthography or its grammar particles and how they interact with each other, this gives us knowledge about the language, but doesn't give us the actual skills to use a language. It doesn't give us skills to speak or listen or read or write. And that's a big problem when it comes to language learning. Um, there's a video that I really like called Backwards Brain Bicycle by Destin from Smarter Every Day. And I'd like to pause and just show you a bit of that.
Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill and I was really proud of it. Everything changed though when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Destin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle.
All right. So the faster I go, the better. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So, this way. Okay. All right, just a second. All right, so, whenever you're ready. Yeah. Wait. No, you have to keep your feet on. Dude, all right, here we go. Wait. Like, you gotta start rolling at least. Okay, go. And go. Oh, go! All right, back up. Okay, wait. Keep your feet on the pedal. Go. Go right off.
So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it.
So I think learning a second language is very much like learning this second way to ride a bike. What it really takes is it takes a lot of practice and it's going to take a lot of falling down and a lot of mistakes. But in the end, when you finally get it, you'll have that ability to actually ride the bike. When we're talking about knowledge about a language, I feel like this is a much higher level skill. This is maybe something we can start getting into when we're actually proficient in the language. So when we're talking about how does this happen in an actual second language classroom? one place we can go to is maybe we don't have data for Tibetan as a second language, but we have a lot of data for English as a second language. If we take a look at English test scores across all of Asia, we can see countries on one hand that do very well, Singapore and Philippines. They use modern teaching methods. They have very communicative environments. And we can see countries that don't have native speaker teachers and they don't have as much money and etc. Or they have a very poor pedagogy or a way of teaching. Now I've left one country off this list. It's also an Asian country, and it scores worse in English tests than Afghanistan, worse than North Korea, worse than Thailand. And I'll give you a second to kind of guess what that might be. It's Japan, and Japan uses the grammar translation method for teaching English. This is something that touches home with us who study Tibetan because that's the method that most universities use to teach Tibetan as a second language. So I just want to end this section with some quotes, some very important quotes from the research, all the research that's been done. Research over a period of nearly 90 years has consistently shown that the teaching of grammar has little or no effect on students. Now, if that was just one researcher saying it, but it's not, it's many. Many people think that direct instruction and drill in grammar, the exercises they remember from their own schooling, provide the shortest, most logical route to language skills. About a century of research, however, indicates otherwise. And you can go ahead, I would actually encourage you to try and find a study that says, grammar study builds language skills. Here's a whole page of citations, studies that's showing that it doesn't. And I've gone ahead and I've given you a second page of citations. At some point I stopped looking for studies connecting grammar and language skills because there just aren't any. There's no good reason to think that studying grammar in a classroom will actually help you comprehend reading better, or actually help you write better, or actually help you start speaking or having listening comprehension. So what does help you is building an external voice, speaking the language a lot. And this gives you a sense of an internal voice connected to the actual meaning, what the symbols represent. And so speaking a language is really, I would say, the best and most effective way for a student to start learning a language.